Have you ever felt like there's an invisible barrier between you and the wealth you deserve? Like no matter how many books you read, how many seminars you attend, or how hard you push yourself, prosperity seems to dance just beyond your fingertips. What if I told you that the answer you've been searching for isn't in any bookstore, any online course, or any guru's teaching, but rather in something that's been hidden in plain sight your entire life? Now here's something that might shake everything you think you know about creating wealth. There exists a kind of knowledge that only a tiny fraction of people ever access. Not because it's locked away in some vault, not because you need special credentials or connections, but because most people are looking in entirely the wrong direction. Has this ever happened to you? You follow all the advice, you work harder, you stay positive, you visualize your goals, you repeat affirmations until your voice goes hoarse, and yet the financial breakthrough you're waiting for never quite materializes. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. You're not alone in this frustration. Millions of people around the world are trapped in this exact cycle, convinced that they're just one strategy away, one opportunity away, one lucky break away from finally breaking through. But what if the problem isn't that you're missing some external piece of the puzzle? What if the real issue is that you've been searching for treasure in the wrong territory entirely? Stay with me here, because what you're about to discover might completely transform how you understand money, success, and your own potential. The wealthiest individuals throughout history, the ones who seemed to effortlessly attract opportunity and abundance. They all understood something fundamental that isn't taught in schools, isn't discussed in mainstream financial advice, and isn't available in any conventional format. They tapped into a frequency, a wavelength of existence that most people don't even know exists. Think about this for a moment. Why is it that some people seem magnetically drawn to success, while others, equally talented and hard-working, struggle endlessly? What separates those who manifest abundance from those who constantly fight for survival? The answer isn't what you've been told. It's not about working harder, being smarter, or having better luck. What you're about to discover is that there's a reason this message found you right now, at this exact moment in your life. There's a reason something inside you said yes when you clicked on this video. That internal yes, that curiosity, that yearning for something more, it's actually evidence that you're already beginning to tune into a frequency that most people never access. And once you understand how to fully align with this frequency, everything changes. The question is, are you ready to see what you haven't been able to see before? Because what comes next will challenge everything you thought you knew about. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because what I'm about to share with you isn't another collection of feel-good quotes or surface-level motivational tactics. This isn't about pumping yourself up with temporary enthusiasm that fades by tomorrow morning. What we're exploring here strikes at the very foundation of how you perceive reality itself, and specifically how you perceive your relationship with abundance, success, and prosperity. Here's a truth that might initially be difficult to accept. The greatest barrier between you and wealth has never been external. It's not the economy, it's not your circumstances, it's not your background or education. The real obstacle, the true forbidden territory, exists entirely within your own consciousness. Your mind has been building walls around certain possibilities for so long that you don't even notice them anymore. These aren't walls constructed by society, by governments, or by some shadowy elite trying to keep you down. They're walls you inherited, passed down through generations of people who themselves never experienced true financial freedom. Think about the messages you absorbed growing up. Perhaps you heard that money doesn't grow on trees, that you have to work yourself to exhaustion to earn a living, that wealthy people are somehow morally suspect, or that wanting financial abundance makes you greedy or shallow. These aren't just casual observations. They're deeply embedded programs running in the background of your subconscious mind, silently directing your decisions, your actions, and ultimately your results. The transformation begins when you recognize that these beliefs aren't universal truths. They're simply stories, narratives that have been repeated so often they feel like reality. If this resonates with you and you want more content like this that goes beyond surface-level advice, subscribe to the channel. Each video is designed to take you deeper into real transformation. But here's where things get really interesting, where the journey takes an unexpected turn that changes everything. What if I told you that wealth isn't something you need to chase, acquire, or earn through years of grinding struggle? What if prosperity isn't a distant destination you're traveling toward, but rather a fundamental quality of who you already are at the deepest level of your being? This might sound abstract or even impossible right now, but stay with this concept for a moment. At a quantum level, at the most fundamental layer of existence, separation is an illusion. The distinction between you and abundance, between your current state and prosperity, exists only in perception. When you truly grasp this, not just intellectually, but in your cells, in your nervous system, in the very fabric of your awareness, something remarkable happens. You stop chasing money like it's running away from you, and you start recognizing that abundance has actually been pursuing you all along, waiting for you to open yourself to receive it. This shift in perception, this fundamental recalibration of how you see yourself in relation to wealth, is the hidden foundation that every genuinely prosperous person has discovered. They don't just think differently about money, they are different at their core. Their identity has transformed. They no longer see themselves as someone trying to become wealthy. They recognize themselves as someone whose natural state is abundance. And when your identity shifts at this level, your external reality has no choice but to reorganize itself to match. The most profound revelations often sound the simplest, but their impact can be absolutely life-changing. This is one of those moments. You're not separate from the prosperity you desire. You're not lacking something that you need to go out and find. The truth is that you've been carrying it within you this entire time, hidden beneath layers of conditioning, fear, and inherited limitations. The real work isn't acquiring wealth, it's removing the barriers that have kept you from recognizing what's already there. Now I realize this might feel uncomfortable, maybe even confronting. Your logical mind might be raising objections right now, pointing to your bank account, your bills, your current circumstances as evidence that this can't possibly be true. That resistance, that inner conflict, is actually a sign that you're touching something real, something that threatens the old story you've been telling yourself about who you are and what's possible for you. If this is resonating with you, if something inside is stirring as you hear these words, write in the comments, "I'm ready to see differently." Let that be your declaration, your first step into this new understanding. There's something fascinating that happens when you start studying the lives of people who've created extraordinary wealth throughout history. You begin to notice patterns, consistencies that go far beyond the typical advice about hard work and discipline. Andrew Carnegie, one of the wealthiest individuals who ever lived, understood something profound about the nature of prosperity that he rarely articulated publicly. John D. Rockefeller operated from a set of principles that went far deeper than business strategy. Nikola Tesla, that brilliant mind who saw the world in terms of energy and vibration, grasped something fundamental about how reality responds to consciousness. And then there's Napoleon Hill, who spent 20 years interviewing hundreds of the most successful people of his era. He wrote Think and Grow Rich, a book that changed millions of lives. But here's what most people don't know. Hill himself admitted that there was a secret woven throughout that entire book, something he could hint at but never fully reveal. He took his readers to the edge of understanding, right to the threshold of the deepest truth, and then stepped back. Why? Because he knew that this knowledge couldn't simply be handed over. It had to be discovered, experienced, integrated at a level that goes beyond intellectual understanding. What these individuals all recognized, what connected their seemingly different approaches to success, was an understanding of reality that operates beneath the surface of everyday awareness. They recognized that everything in this universe, including money, is fundamentally made of energy. Not metaphorically, not poetically, but literally. Modern physics confirms what ancient wisdom traditions have always known. Beneath the appearance of solid matter, everything is vibration, frequency, and information organizing itself into patterns. When you grasp this principle, when you really let it sink in beyond the conceptual level, your entire relationship with money undergoes a radical transformation. Money stops being this solid, scarce thing that you have to wrestle away from an unwilling universe. Instead, you begin to recognize it as a form of energy that flows according to specific laws, responding to certain frequencies and signatures. Just like a radio can only pick up stations it's tuned to, you can only attract the financial opportunities and resources that match your current vibrational state. This isn't abstract philosophy. This has direct, practical implications for your life right now. That sensation you might be feeling as you listen to these words, that slight tingling or warmth in your chest, that subtle shift in how your body feels, that's not random. It's evidence that your frequency is already beginning to change. You're starting to resonate with a different bandwidth of possibility. The very fact that this information found you, that you're here absorbing these concepts right now, indicates that something within you is ready to align with a higher level of abundance. Most people go through their entire lives operating at a frequency of scarcity, lack, and limitation without ever realizing it. Their thoughts consistently vibrate at the wavelength of not enough money, not enough time, not enough opportunities. And the universe, being the responsive system that it is, continues to reflect that frequency back to them in the form of their lived experience. They're broadcasting scarcity and wondering why abundance never arrives. They're tuned to the station of struggle and can't understand why success remains elusive. But when you consciously shift your internal frequency, when you begin to vibrate at the level of abundance and prosperity, the external world has to reorganize itself to match. This isn't magic or wishful thinking. It's simply how energy works. Like attracts like. Frequency attracts matching frequency, and money, being crystallized energy, flows toward those who are broadcasting the signal it resonates with. The truly wealthy individuals throughout history didn't just work hard or get lucky. They discovered how to tune themselves to the frequency of abundance. They learned to maintain that vibrational state regardless of external circumstances. They understood that their internal state determined their external results, not the other way around. This was the hidden knowledge, the secret behind the secret, the truth that transformed everything for them. And now you're beginning to access this same understanding. You're crossing the threshold that Napoleon Hill could only point toward. The journey you're on right now, this moment of recognition and awakening, this is where genuine transformation begins. If you're feeling this shift happening inside you, if these concepts are clicking into place in a way that feels both new and strangely familiar, write in the comments, "My frequency is changing." Acknowledge what's unfolding within you right now. Now, there's something we need to address directly because it's probably one of the most damaging misconceptions you've been carrying around without even realizing it. From your earliest days in school, you've been fed a very specific narrative about how success works. Study hard, get good grades, work diligently, follow the established path, and prosperity will eventually find you. It's presented as a simple equation: effort in, results out. The harder you work, the more money you'll make. The more hours you put in, the more success you'll achieve. This formula has been drilled into your consciousness so deeply that questioning it almost feels rebellious. But here's the uncomfortable truth that shatters this entire framework. Look around at the world. How many people do you know who've worked themselves into exhaustion, who've sacrificed their health, their relationships, their peace of mind, in pursuit of financial security, only to find themselves still struggling? How many individuals die after decades of relentless labor without ever experiencing true abundance? If hard work alone was the answer, if effort was the magic ingredient, then every construction worker, every nurse working double shifts, every person grinding away at multiple jobs would be wealthy. But that's not what we see, is it? The system taught you to chase money, to pursue it, to run after it with increasing desperation, and that pursuit itself becomes the trap. Because here's what they never told you, what fundamentally changes everything once you understand it. Money cannot be chased. It can only be attracted. These aren't just different words describing the same thing. They represent completely opposite approaches with completely opposite results. When you chase something, you're operating from a place of lack, of not having, of desperation. That energy of pursuit actually pushes away what you're trying to catch. It's like trying to grab water with a clenched fist. The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips away. But attraction works on entirely different principles. Attraction happens when you become the kind of person, when you embody the frequency that naturally draws opportunities and resources towards you. If something shifted for you while watching this, hit that like button. It helps this message reach others who need it, and it affirms your own readiness to receive. This is where we enter territory that most of humanity remains completely oblivious to. There are invisible laws governing how attraction works in this universe, laws as consistent and reliable as gravity. Yet 99% of people go through their entire lives without ever becoming aware of them. These aren't mystical or supernatural. They're simply operating at a level of reality that conventional education doesn't acknowledge or explore. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to have extraordinary luck with money? Opportunities fall into their lap. The right connections appear at the right time. They seem to effortlessly flow from one success to another, while others, equally talented and hard-working, constantly struggle. The typical explanation is luck, timing, privilege, or connections, but those are surface-level observations that miss the deeper mechanism at work. These fortunate individuals aren't necessarily smarter than you. They haven't necessarily worked harder than you. What they've done, whether consciously or unconsciously, is align themselves with the invisible principles that govern attraction. They've tuned themselves to a frequency that money resonates with. They've learned to operate from a state of being that naturally magnetizes resources and opportunities. They've discovered how to work with these hidden laws instead of against them. The difference between someone who attracts wealth easily and someone who struggles despite tremendous effort often has nothing to do with their actions and everything to do with their internal state. It's about the energetic signature they're broadcasting into the field of infinite possibility. It's about whether they're vibrating at the frequency of abundance or the frequency of scarcity, regardless of how hard they're physically working. This revelation fundamentally changes the game because it means that transformation isn't about doing more. It's about becoming different. It's not about adding more. hours to your workday, or grinding harder at tasks that aren't producing results. It's about shifting your internal frequency, aligning yourself with the invisible laws that actually govern prosperity, and allowing yourself to be pulled forward by attraction rather than exhausting yourself through pursuit. The people who've cracked this code, who've learned to read what we're calling the forbidden book, they operate from a completely different paradigm. They understand that their primary work isn't external hustle, it's internal alignment. They know that when they get their frequency right, when they embody the state of abundance, the external circumstances reorganize themselves naturally. If this is revealing a completely different path than the one you've been walking, if you're recognizing that perhaps all that chasing and striving has been the very thing blocking your breakthrough, write in the comments, "I choose attraction over pursuit." Let that declaration mark the moment you stepped into a new understanding. What we're touching on now goes to the very core of why some people transform their financial reality while others remain stuck despite knowing all the right strategies and techniques. It all comes down to something that rarely gets discussed in wealth creation circles, yet it's the single most powerful determining factor in your results. That factor is your identity. Not your goals, not your desires, not even your actions, but who you fundamentally believe. Yourself to be at the deepest level. Here's a truth that might feel confronting at first. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. Read that again slowly because it changes everything. All the vision boards in the world, all the affirmations repeated 1,000 times, all the goal-setting exercises and manifestation rituals. None of it can override your core identity. If at the fundamental level of your being you identify as someone who struggles, someone who barely gets by, someone for whom financial security is always just out of reach, then that's the reality you'll continue creating, no matter what techniques you apply. This is why so many people experience frustration with personal development. They're trying to plant seeds of abundance in soil that's been conditioned for scarcity. They're attempting to build a mansion on a foundation designed for a shack. The structure can never be stable because the identity underneath doesn't support it. Your subconscious mind, which controls the vast majority of your decisions and behaviors, will always work to keep your external reality consistent with your internal identity. It's not sabotaging you, it's actually trying to maintain coherence, to keep your experience aligned with who you believe yourself to be. When your identity shifts, when you stop seeing yourself as someone trying to become wealthy and start recognizing yourself as someone whose natural state is abundance, everything changes. Not because the external world suddenly becomes easier, but because you begin making different decisions, noticing different opportunities, taking different actions, all automatically, without force or effort. Your identity acts like a filter, determining what you see as possible and what registers as relevant in your awareness. This brings us to something crucial, something that serves as the foundation for this entire transformation. The frequency of abundance, the vibration that naturally attracts wealth and opportunity, has a specific name. It's called absolute faith. Now, before any resistance comes up, this isn't about religious faith or blind belief in something you hope might be true. This is something far more powerful and grounded. Absolute faith is based on understanding. It emerges from recognizing how the universe actually operates at the fundamental level. It's the deep knowing that you and abundance are not separate entities, that prosperity isn't something outside of you that you need to somehow capture and bring into your life. It's the recognition that attempting to separate yourself from abundance is as impossible as trying to separate a wave from the ocean it's made of. Think about that image for a moment. A wave appears to be a distinct thing, separate and individual, moving across the surface of the water. But try to take the wave away from the ocean. Try to isolate it, to remove it from the source it emerged from. You can't, because the wave isn't separate from the ocean. It is the ocean, temporarily expressing itself in a particular form. The wave is made of ocean, moves through ocean, and will return to ocean. There is no separation, only the appearance of separation. This is your true relationship with abundance. You're not separate from the infinite creative source that generates all prosperity. You're an expression of it, a wave in the ocean of infinite possibility. The only thing creating the experience of separation is perspective, the illusion of individuality taken so seriously that you've forgotten what you're actually made of. When this understanding moves from intellectual concept to lived experience, when it drops from your head into your body and becomes an embodied knowing, something remarkable happens. Desperation dissolves. Anxiety about money begins to fade. The frantic energy of chasing and grasping relaxes into something much more powerful, a calm certainty that what you need will flow to you because you are made of the same. Substance as abundance itself. This is absolute faith, not hoping that things might work out, not positive thinking layered over doubt, but a fundamental trust rooted in understanding the actual nature of reality and your place within it. If you're beginning to feel this shift from separation to connection, from striving to allowing, from hoping to knowing, write in the comments, "I am abundance." Let those 3 words be your anchor into this new understanding. Now, as this understanding begins to take root in your awareness, something predictable is going to happen. There's a voice inside your head that's probably already starting to speak up, and it's important that you recognize it for what it is. This voice says things like, "Yes, but I'm different. My situation is unique. I have debts. I don't have the right connections. I missed my opportunities. I'm too old, too young, too inexperienced." This voice has 1,000 reasons why the principles we're discussing might work for others, but somehow won't work for you. This voice isn't your enemy, though it often feels like harsh criticism or painful reality. It's actually something more interesting. It's a guardian. Its sole purpose is to protect you by keeping you away from transformation, because transformation means change, and change feels dangerous to the part of you that values safety and predictability above all else. This guardian voice has been with you for so long, has become so familiar, that you've mistaken it for truth, for rational thinking, for realistic assessment of your circumstances. But here's what that voice doesn't want you to realize. Every single excuse it offers, every limitation it points to, every reason it gives for why you can't have abundance, all of it is just story. Compelling story, convincing story, story backed up by what appears to be evidence in your current reality, but story nonetheless. The debts are real, yes. The current bank balance is what it is. But those are not permanent. Conditions determining your future, their temporary circumstances reflecting your past frequency, your previous state of consciousness. The profound truth that the guardian voice works so hard to keep hidden is this: you already possess everything necessary to become genuinely wealthy. Not in some distant future, after you've done 1,000 things differently, but right now. The creative power, the consciousness, the connection to infinite possibility, it's all already here within you. The only thing required is your willingness to release the fear that's been running the show, to step away from the identity of limitation, and to embrace what you actually are underneath all the conditioning. This brings us to something that Napoleon Hill discovered but struggled to articulate in language his contemporaries could understand. He was touching on knowledge that quantum physics would later validate, knowledge that completely reframes how we think about ourselves and reality. What he realized is that you are a being of frequency before you are a being of matter. This isn't abstract spiritual talk or philosophical musing. This is actually describing the fundamental nature of reality as modern science now understands it. Every single thought you think generates a measurable electromagnetic frequency. This isn't metaphor. Your thoughts emit actual vibrations that ripple out into the quantum field, that invisible substrate of pure potential from which all physical reality emerges. Every emotion you feel is an electromagnetic wave, a pattern of energy moving through this field, interacting with it, influencing how it collapses into the experiences you encounter. What this means practically is that your consciousness isn't just observing reality, it's actively participating in creating it, moment by moment, thought by thought, feeling by feeling. You're not a passive recipient of circumstances that happen to you. You're a frequency generator, constantly broadcasting signals into the field, and that field responds by organizing circumstances, opportunities, and encounters that match the frequency you're emitting. When you're broadcasting fear, when you're vibrating at the frequency of scarcity and limitation, the field responds by delivering experiences that confirm and reinforce those frequencies. It's not punishment. It's simply resonance. Like attracts like at the vibrational level. But when you shift your frequency, when you begin consistently vibrating at the level of abundance, possibility, and creative power, the field must respond differently. It cannot do otherwise. The circumstances of your life begin to reorganize themselves to match this new signal you're transmitting. This is the deeper secret that Hill was pointing toward, but couldn't fully articulate in the language of his time. He could see the pattern in the lives of successful people. They all somehow maintained a particular internal state, regardless of external circumstances. But he couldn't explain the mechanism. Now we understand. They were frequency generators who learned to maintain the signal of abundance, and physical reality had no choice but to mirror that frequency back to them. Your transformation isn't about changing what's outside. It's about recognizing what you are at the most fundamental level and learning to consciously direct the frequency you're broadcasting into the creative field of infinite possibility. If you're starting to grasp how profoundly this changes everything, how it places the power squarely in your hands rather than in external circumstances, write in the comments, "I am a frequency generator." Claim this truth about your nature. Understanding that you're a frequency generator is the first breakthrough, but there's a second revelation that's equally important and often overlooked. The universe operates as a perfect mirror. It doesn't judge your frequency as good or bad, worthy or unworthy. It simply reflects back to you whatever signal you're consistently broadcasting. This mirroring is precise, neutral, and absolutely reliable. When your predominant thoughts revolve around scarcity, when you wake up worrying about bills, when you move through your day thinking, "I can't afford this," and "there's never enough," you're vibrating at the frequency of lack. And the universe, being the faithful mirror it is, reflects that frequency back to you in the form of experiences that confirm it. More unexpected expenses appear. Opportunities fall through. The money that does come seems to slip away just as quickly, not because you're cursed or unlucky, but because the mirror is showing you exactly what you're broadcasting. The same mechanism works with fear. When you feel anxious about money, when you approach your finances with dread and worry, you're emitting a very specific electromagnetic signature. That fear-based frequency goes out into the quantum field, and the field responds by delivering more situations that trigger fear. It's not trying to punish you, it's simply matching your signal, giving you more of what you're asking for through your vibrational transmission. This might seem like a cruel joke at first, like the universe is working against you. But actually, it's the most empowering principle you could possibly discover. Because if the mirror reflects what you transmit, then changing what you transmit changes what gets reflected back. When you shift your internal frequency from scarcity to abundance, From fear to trust, from limitation to possibility, the external circumstances must reorganize themselves to match. They have to. It's not optional. It's the fundamental law of how consciousness interacts with the creative field. This revelation transforms everything because it means you're not at the mercy of random circumstances or external forces. You're holding the remote control. You're selecting the channel. Your internal state is the cause, and your external experience is the effect. Get the cause right, maintain it consistently, and the effects will inevitably align. But here's where most people stumble, and it's critical that you understand this before you go any further on this journey. Changing your frequency isn't something you do once and then forget about. It's not like flipping a light switch where the room stays illuminated until you deliberately turn it off again. This is a practice, a discipline, a moment-by-moment choice that requires consciousness and commitment. Every single morning when you wake up, you're faced with a decision. The old patterns, those deeply grooved neural pathways formed by years of conditioning, they're right there waiting. The habitual worry thoughts, the automatic scarcity mindset, the familiar frequency of limitation, it's all queued up and ready to run on autopilot the moment you stop paying attention. Your default programming wants to take over because it's comfortable, it's known, it's what your nervous system has practiced for so long that it requires no effort. But you have a choice. You can let those old patterns run the show, or you can consciously intervene and tune yourself to a different frequency. This is the internal work, the real work that nobody can do for you. It's recognizing when you've slipped into scarcity thinking and gently redirecting your attention toward abundance. It's catching yourself in the middle of worry and choosing trust instead. It's feeling fear arise and meeting it with faith rather than letting it dictate your state. This isn't easy, especially in the beginning. It feels like swimming upstream, like pushing against the current of your entire history. You're essentially rewiring your brain, creating new neural pathways, establishing new default patterns. This is why so many people start this journey with enthusiasm and then slip back into old ways. They underestimate how much vigilance and consistency it requires to maintain a new frequency until it becomes your natural set point. But here's what makes it worth every ounce of effort. Every time you consciously choose the frequency of abundance over the frequency of scarcity, you're not just changing that one moment. You're sending a clear signal into the quantum field. You're training your nervous system. You're building the momentum that eventually makes this new frequency your default rather than something you have to effort toward. If you're recognizing that this is going to require real commitment, real daily practice, real moment-to-moment awareness, write in the comments, "I commit to my frequency." Let that be your declaration of readiness for the actual work of transformation. There's a way of understanding reality that completely transforms how you approach wealth creation, and it requires expanding your perception beyond the linear, physical world you can see and touch. Imagine for a moment that the universe isn't just this single timeline you're experiencing, but rather a vast ocean of infinite possibilities. In this ocean, every potential version of your life already exists, not as distant dreams or wishful fantasies, but as actual potential realities occupying different frequencies within the quantum field. Right now, there's a version of you that's already wealthy, that already has the financial freedom you desire, that already lives the lifestyle you dream about. That version isn't in some imaginary future that may or may not arrive. It exists right now in the ocean of possibilities, vibrating at a specific frequency, waiting for you to align with it. Think of it like radio stations, all broadcasting simultaneously. They're all there, all real, all available. The only question is which frequency you tune into. Most people spend their entire lives tuned into one station, the frequency of their current circumstances, their current identity, their current limitations. They believe that the only reality is the one they're experiencing right now, and everything else is just hopeful imagination. But quantum physics tells us something radically different. It tells us that multiple potential realities exist in superposition, and it's the act of observation, of consciousness, of focused attention that collapses one of those potentials into your experienced reality. When you understand this, when you really grasp what it means, you realize that becoming wealthy isn't about building something from scratch. It's about tuning into the frequency where that wealth already exists, where that version of you is already living that reality. You activate that potential reality through your vibrational frequency, through consistently aligning your thoughts, emotions, and identity with that version rather than the version you've been habitually tuned into. This leads us to something that might feel unsettling at first, but is actually the most liberating truth you could encounter. You don't have to become that wealthy person. You don't have to transform into someone you're not. You already are that person. You've always been that person. You've just forgotten. You've been wearing a mask for so long, the mask of limitation, struggle, and insufficiency, that you've confused the mask with your actual face. Removing that mask, remembering your true nature, this is where the real discomfort comes in. Because that mask didn't just appear randomly. You've been carefully constructing it for years, maybe decades. It's been your protection, your explanation for why things are the way they are, your familiar identity, the struggler, the victim of circumstances, the one who never quite has enough, the person to whom life happens rather than the creator of life. That identity has served a purpose. It's kept you safe from the risk of really trying and potentially failing. It's given you a story to tell yourself and others about why you don't have what you want. It's been your shield against the terrifying responsibility of recognizing that you actually have the power to change everything. And now, to step into abundance, you have to let that identity die. You have to grieve it, release it, watch it dissolve, even though every fiber of your conditioning wants to cling to it. This death of the old self, this shedding of the limiting identity, it hurts. Not physically, but in a deep psychological way. It's disorienting to release the person you've been for so long. It feels vulnerable to stand without those familiar excuses and stories. It's like standing naked before the universe and saying, I am ready to be who I actually am, not who I've been pretending to be. That takes courage. That requires a willingness to be uncomfortable, to feel the fear, and do it anyway. But on the other side of that discomfort, on the other side of that death, is a rebirth into your true identity. The identity that was always there underneath the masks and stories. The you that is naturally abundant, naturally creative, naturally powerful. That version isn't something you need to work toward or earn. It's what remains when you stop defending and maintaining the limited version. If you're feeling this call to let go of the old identity, even though it's scary, even though you don't know exactly who you'll be without it, write in the comments, I release who I'm not. Mark this moment of surrender. Once you've made the decision to release the old identity, once you've committed to aligning with your true, abundant nature, the next step is both. Incredibly simple and surprisingly challenging. You must become vigilant about the internal conversation you're having with yourself every single day. Most people don't realize they're in constant dialogue with themselves, running a continuous stream of thoughts that rarely gets examined or questioned. But here's the crucial insight. Every single thought you think is an instruction to the universe. It's an order being placed, a request being transmitted into the creative field. When you think, I can't afford that, you're not just making a neutral observation about your current bank balance. You're issuing a command to the universe that says, give me more situations where I can't afford things. When you repeat to yourself, I never have enough, you're programming scarcity into your experience, telling the field to organize circumstances where you continue to never have enough. When you say money is hard to get, you're creating energetic resistance in the natural flow of abundance, building invisible barriers that make wealth harder to access. These aren't just pessimistic thoughts with no real impact. They're creative forces actively shaping your reality. And the insidious thing about them is that they run automatically beneath your conscious awareness, broadcasting their instructions 24 hours a day unless you deliberately intervene. You might spend 5 minutes doing affirmations or visualization, and then spend the rest of the day unconsciously thinking thoughts of limitation, essentially cancelling out any positive work you attempted to do. This is where ancient wisdom and cutting-edge science are arriving at the same conclusion from different directions. The mystics and masters throughout history understood something that quantum physics is now confirming. Thoughts are not abstract, intangible things floating meaninglessly through your mind. They are actual forces, measurable energies that interact with the physical world. Your thoughts shape matter. They attract circumstances. They create the texture and content of your physical reality. Every time you think, "I don't have money," you're not passively observing a fact. You're actively, literally creating more lack in your experience. The thought itself is a creative act, sending out a specific frequency that the quantum field responds to by manifesting situations that match that frequency. You're using the most powerful creative force in the universe, your consciousness, to reinforce and perpetuate the exact condition you claim you want to escape from. This is why so many people remain trapped in cycles they desperately want to break free from. They're using their thoughts to recreate the same reality over and over, and then wondering why nothing changes despite their efforts. They don't realize that every complaint, every worry, every fearful thought about money is a direct instruction to the universe to deliver more experiences that justify those thoughts. The transformation begins when you start treating your thoughts with the seriousness they deserve. When you recognize that you're not just thinking random mental activity, but rather wielding creative power with every single thought. This awareness changes everything because it means you can no longer afford to be casual or unconscious about what you're thinking. Your thoughts aren't harmless. They're the paintbrush with which you're painting your reality. So the practice becomes catching yourself in the act of thinking limiting thoughts and consciously choosing different ones, not as positive thinking overlay, not as denial of current circumstances, but as deliberate selection of the creative instructions you're sending out. Instead of, "I can't afford that," you train yourself to think, "Money flows to me easily." Instead of, "I never have enough," you practice, "I am surrounded by abundance." Instead of, "Money is hard to get," you choose, "Wealth comes to me naturally." This isn't about lying to yourself or pretending your current reality doesn't exist. It's about recognizing that your current reality is the result of past thoughts and choosing to generate different thoughts now to create a different reality tomorrow. You're not denying where you are. You're using your creative power to move toward where you want to be. If you're recognizing how much power you've been giving to unconscious thoughts, and you're ready to become deliberate about what you're creating with your mind, write in the comments, "My thoughts create my reality." Claim your power as a conscious creator. Once you begin to consciously direct your thoughts, once you start treating them as the creative commands they truly are, there's a particular state of being that amplifies this power exponentially. It's a frequency that acts like a master key, capable of unlocking doors that seemed permanently sealed. That state is gratitude. Not gratitude as a polite social gesture or something you perform on special occasions, but gratitude as a fundamental vibrational stance, a way of being that transforms everything it touches. Here's why gratitude is so extraordinarily powerful. It's literally impossible to be in a genuine state of gratitude and a state of lack at the same time. Try it right now. Think of something you're truly grateful for, something that fills you with appreciation when you focus on it. Feel that warmth, that expansion in your chest. Now, while holding that feeling, try to simultaneously feel poor, limited, or scarce. You can't. The two frequencies cannot coexist in the same space. They're opposite ends of the spectrum, and when one is present, the other must dissolve. This is why gratitude isn't just a nice practice or a feel-good exercise. It's a strategic tool for shifting your frequency from lack to abundance. When you're vibrating in gratitude, you're automatically broadcasting the signal of abundance, of having, of sufficiency, and the universe, being the mirror we discussed earlier, reflects that signal back to you in the form of more things to be grateful for, more reasons to feel abundant, more circumstances that match that frequency. But here's where we need to address something that might be stirring in your mind right now, something that's probably prevented you from fully embracing these principles in the past. You've likely tried techniques like affirmations and visualization before. Maybe you gave them a genuine effort, repeated positive statements, created vision boards, spent time imagining your ideal life, and maybe those efforts didn't produce the results you were hoping for, which left you skeptical, disappointed, or convinced that these principles don't actually work. Let me tell you exactly why those previous attempts fell short, because understanding this is crucial. The techniques themselves aren't flawed. The principles are absolutely sound. What happened is that you were applying abundance techniques while operating from a scarcity mentality. You were trying to fill a cup that had a hole in the bottom. No matter how much water you poured in, it kept draining out through that hole, and that hole is doubt. Doubt is the invisible saboteur that undermines every effort toward transformation. It's the voice that whispers, "This won't work for me," even as you're doing the practice. It's the feeling of, "I'm just pretending," that lurks beneath your affirmations. It's the skepticism that questions whether any of this is real while you're visualizing your desired reality. And when doubt is present, it creates a conflicting frequency that cancels out the positive signal you're attempting to broadcast. Now, here's what most people misunderstand about doubt. They think the solution is to eliminate it completely, to achieve some perfect state of unwavering belief before they can move forward. But that's setting an impossible standard. Doubt is a natural part of the human experience, especially when you're attempting something new, when you're stepping into unfamiliar territory. Waiting until doubt completely disappears before you act means you'll never act, because doubt doesn't fully vanish until after you've seen results, and you can't see results until you've acted. The real solution isn't eliminating doubt, it's learning to act despite doubt. It's developing the ability to hold doubt in your awareness without letting it control your choices. Doubt can be present, it can even be loud, but it doesn't have to be in the driver's seat. You can acknowledge it, recognize it as the protective mechanism it is, and still choose to align your frequency with abundance, to speak words of prosperity, to take inspired action toward wealth. Think of it like learning to swim. The fear of water, the doubt about your ability to stay afloat, those don't magically disappear before you get in the pool. They're still there, but you choose to get in anyway. You choose to practice anyway. And gradually, through repeated experience, through proving to yourself that you can indeed swim, the doubt diminishes. It never had to be gone first. It just had to be overruled by your decision to act. If you're recognizing that doubt has been the invisible barrier holding you back, and you're ready to act despite it rather than waiting for perfect certainty, write in the comments, "I act beyond my doubt." This is your declaration of courage. There's a beautiful metaphor that perfectly illustrates how faith actually works in the context of creating wealth, and it comes from observing something as simple as a farmer planting seeds. Picture this: A farmer takes a tiny seed, places it in dark soil where he can't see it, covers it completely, and then walks away. He doesn't dig it up every day to check if it's growing. He doesn't panic when he doesn't see immediate results. He simply trusts with absolute certainty that beneath the surface, invisible processes are at work. That farmer's faith isn't blind belief in something he hopes might happen. It's based on understanding natural laws, on knowing how seeds work, on recognizing that growth happens in darkness before it ever becomes visible. He knows that if he plants the right seed in fertile soil, provides water and sunlight and gives it time, the plant will emerge. Not because he deserves it, not because he's lucky, but because that's simply how nature operates. His confidence comes from knowledge, not from wishful thinking. Your relationship with wealth needs to embody this same quality of faith. When you plant the seed of desire, when you begin vibrating at the frequency of abundance, when you align your thoughts and identity with prosperity, you're initiating processes that are working beneath the surface of your visible reality. You won't see evidence immediately. There will be a period where nothing seems to be happening, where your circumstances look exactly the same as they did before. This is where most people abandon the process. They check too soon, doubt too quickly, and in their impatience they uproot the seed before it has a chance to sprout. But if you can maintain that farmer's faith, if you can trust the invisible processes while you water your desire with abundant thoughts, while you nurture it with inspired action, while you tend to your internal frequency regardless of external appearances, then manifestation isn't just possible, it's inevitable. The universe is working beneath the surface, orchestrating circumstances, aligning opportunities, preparing the ground for your abundance to emerge into visible form. This brings us to something that might challenge some deeply held beliefs you've been carrying around, beliefs that have actually been blocking your prosperity without you realizing it. Money isn't a neutral, inanimate object, it's energy, and like all energy, it's conscious in its own way. It responds to how you feel about it, to the emotions you carry regarding wealth and in prosperity. This is a subtle but absolutely crucial understanding. If somewhere in your psyche you harbor resentment toward wealthy people, if you've absorbed the cultural narrative that the rich are greedy or corrupt, if you've ever found yourself criticizing someone for having abundance, you're creating an energetic barrier between yourself and money. You're essentially saying, "I don't want to be like those people." And money, responding to that signal, stays away. It can't come to you without making you into the very thing you've judged as negative. The same principle applies if you believe money itself is corrupting, if you think wealth makes people selfish or disconnected from what really matters. When you hold these beliefs, you're literally at war with the energy you claim you want to attract. How can money flow to someone who fundamentally believes it's a negative force? How can abundance manifest for someone who secretly fears that having it would damage their character or relationships? This internal conflict is invisible but devastatingly effective at keeping you stuck. On the surface level, you say you want financial freedom, but at a deeper level, you're repelling it through judgment, fear, and negative associations. It's like pressing the accelerator and the brake simultaneously. You're not going anywhere, and you're creating a lot of friction in the process. The shift required here is to change your emotional relationship with money. You need to see it as a tool, as amplified energy that can be used for tremendous good or tremendous harm, depending on the consciousness of the person wielding it. Money doesn't corrupt people. It reveals and amplifies who they already are. If you're a generous, loving, purpose-driven person, having more money simply allows you to be more generous, more loving, and more effective in fulfilling your purpose. When you can celebrate others' wealth without envy, when you can genuinely appreciate prosperity wherever you see When you can feel excitement rather than judgment about financial success, you're aligning yourself with the frequency of abundance itself. If you're willing to release any negative judgments about money and wealthy people, write in the comments, "I celebrate all prosperity." This is your energetic realignment with abundance. Once you've released those negative judgments and resistances around money, once you've cleared away the energetic barriers that were keeping abundance at arm's length, the next step is to actively cultivate a completely different kind of relationship with wealth. You need to fall in love with money. Now, before any alarm bells go off, this isn't about becoming greedy, materialistic, or obsessed. This is about developing the kind of warm, appreciative relationship you might have with a dear friend. Affectionate, grateful, comfortable, trusting. Think about how you treat people you genuinely care about. You speak well of them. You're happy when good things happen. To them, you appreciate their presence in your life. You don't fear them or resent them. This is exactly the kind of energy you want to bring to your relationship with money. When you see someone else experiencing financial success, your automatic response should be celebration, not comparison or envy. Every time you genuinely celebrate another person's wealth, you're sending a powerful signal to the universe that says, "Yes, this is what I want. This is what I value. This is the reality I'm choosing to align with." That signal goes out into the quantum field, and the field responds by bringing similar experiences into your own life. But when you feel jealousy or resentment towards someone else's success, when you think, "Why them and not me?" or "They don't deserve that," you're broadcasting the frequency of lack and unfairness. You're telling the universe that prosperity is scarce, that someone else having it means there's less available for you. And that signal gets reflected back to you in the form of continued scarcity. The truth is that abundance isn't a limited resource that gets depleted when others access it. It's an infinite field of possibility. Someone else's wealth doesn't diminish your potential for wealth any more than someone else's happiness diminishes your capacity for joy. In fact, every example of prosperity you witness is evidence that abundance is available, that it's real, that it flows to people in this physical reality. Rather than making you feel worse, each example should be making you feel more hopeful, more certain that what you desire is absolutely achievable. This shift from competition to celebration, from scarcity thinking to abundance mentality, it fundamentally changes your energetic relationship with wealth. Money stops being this thing you're fighting for, competing for, anxiously pursuing. Instead, it becomes something you're in harmonious relationship with, something that flows naturally to you because you're no longer creating resistance through negative emotions. But there's another dimension to wealth creation that's absolutely essential to understand, something that separates those who achieve temporary financial gains from those who build lasting prosperity. True wealth doesn't come from taking, it comes from giving. The more value you provide to the world, the more abundance flows back to you. This isn't just philosophical idealism, it's actually the fundamental operating principle of how the universe manages energy exchange. Think about every genuinely wealthy person you know of or have studied. What do they all have in common? They solved problems. They served large numbers of people. They created value that others were willing to exchange their money for. The wealthiest individuals aren't those who hoarded or manipulated. They're those who found ways to improve lives, to solve challenges, to make things easier or better for others. The universe operates as a perfect exchange system. What you give out returns to you multiplied. This principle completely reframes the pursuit of wealth. Instead of asking, "How can I make more money?" the question becomes, "How can I serve more people? How can I solve bigger problems? How can I create more value in the world?" When you shift your focus to service, to contribution, to making a genuine positive impact, money becomes a natural byproduct rather than the primary goal. You're no longer chasing it. You're creating the conditions for it to chase you. If you're ready to embrace both loving money and serving others as two sides of the same abundant coin, write in the comments, "I create value, I receive abundance." This declaration aligns you with the universal law of exchange. Understanding that you create value and receive abundance in return is a powerful realization. But there's an even deeper layer to explore, something that transforms not just your relationship with money, but your entire understanding of who you are. Within you exists a power that's greater than any external circumstance, greater than your current bank balance, greater than the economy, greater than any obstacle you face. This power is your higher self, the part of you that's connected to the infinite intelligence of the universe itself. Most people go through their entire lives identifying exclusively with their physical body and their everyday personality. They think they are their job title, their social role, their current circumstances, their history. But that's just the surface level, the costume you're wearing in this particular lifetime. At a much deeper level, you are an infinite expression of universal creative intelligence. You're not separate from the source of all abundance. You're a direct channel through which that source wants to express itself in the form of wealth, creativity, love, and power. Think about this for a moment. The same intelligence that organizes galaxies, that causes seeds to become trees, that orchestrates the complexity of your own body without any conscious effort on your part, that intelligence is flowing through you right now. You have access to it. You are made of it. When you align with your higher self, when you tap into this level of consciousness, you're no longer operating from the limited perspective of your personality. You're drawing on infinite resources, infinite creativity, infinite possibility. This is why some people seem to access solutions that others can't see, why certain individuals have breakthrough insights that transform entire industries, why particular moments of inspiration change the course of someone's life. They're tapping into their higher self, even if they don't call it that, or consciously understand what's happening. They're momentarily transcending the limited thinking of the conditioned mind and accessing the broader intelligence that's always available. But here's what's happening for most people, including possibly you. The channel between your everyday consciousness and your higher self is blocked. It's not broken, it's just clogged with years of accumulated debris. That debris consists of negative conditioning, limiting beliefs about what's possible for you, judgments about yourself and your worthiness, fear-based thinking inherited from previous generations, and countless small moments of telling yourself, "I can't," or "that's not for me." Your ancestors, through no fault of their own, lived in times of genuine material scarcity. Resources truly were limited. Competition for survival was real. The beliefs and behaviors that kept them alive in that context got encoded and passed down through generations, becoming part of your unconscious programming. But those beliefs, which may have served them in their circumstances, are now blocking your access to the abundance that's actually available in your reality. On top of that ancestral programming, you've added your own layers through personal experiences of disappointment, rejection, or failure. Every time you tried something and it didn't work, every time someone told you that you weren't good enough, every time you looked at your circumstances and felt defeated, those moments added sediment to the blockage, making the channel between you and your higher self narrower and narrower. The most important work you can do, more important than any external strategy or business plan, is clearing this channel. It's the daily practice of consciously aligning with your higher self, of tuning into that deeper intelligence, of remembering that you're more than the limited identity you've been operating from. This isn't something you do once and then forget about. It's a practice, a discipline, a commitment to consistently choosing your higher perspective over your conditioned reactions. This alignment happens through meditation, through moments of stillness where you step back from the constant mental chatter and connect with the deeper awareness beneath it. It happens through consciously choosing thoughts that reflect your infinite nature rather than your limited conditioning. It happens through questioning beliefs that don't serve you and replacing them with truth. It happens through treating yourself with the respect and appreciation that reflects your true identity as an expression of universal intelligence. If you're recognizing that clearing this channel, aligning with your higher self, is the real work that makes everything else possible, write in the comments, "I align with infinite intelligence." This is your commitment to the deeper practice. Once you begin aligning with your higher self, once you start clearing that channel and connecting with infinite intelligence, something liberating becomes apparent. The money you're seeking isn't something you need to manufacture from thin air. It's not waiting to be created through some Herculean effort or stroke of genius. The wealth you desire already exists, right now, circulating through the global economy. There are trillions of dollars moving through the world every single day, changing hands, flowing from one account to another, seeking places to land and multiply. A portion of that existing abundance already has your name on it, not metaphorically, but as a real potential waiting to be activated. The money you need for your next level of life is already out there in someone's account, and the universe is simply waiting for you to open the channel so it can redirect that flow in your direction. This completely changes the game because it means you're not trying to create something that doesn't exist. You're simply positioning yourself to receive what's already available. The challenge isn't that money is scarce or that there isn't enough to go around. The challenge is that your internal channel is either closed or severely constricted, making it impossible for the abundance that's seeking you to actually reach you. It's like having a water main running right past your house with abundant supply, but your personal connection is blocked with sediment and debris. The water pressure is there, the resource is available, but nothing's flowing into your home because the pathway is obstructed. Opening that channel requires understanding how it got blocked in the first place. And this is where we need to look honestly at the programming you've been carrying since childhood. From your earliest years, you absorbed beliefs about money like a sponge soaks up water. You didn't consciously choose these beliefs. They were simply the environment you were swimming in, and your young mind recorded everything as truth without the capacity to question or filter. You heard phrases repeated over and over. Money doesn't grow on trees. We can't afford that. Rich people are lucky or dishonest. You have to work hard for every penny. You watched adults in your life stress about finances, argue about bills, express fear and anxiety whenever money was discussed. Your nervous system registered all of that emotional charge and coded money as something associated with tension, conflict, and scarcity. That programming went deep, beneath your conscious awareness, into the subconscious mind, where it continues to run automatically, directing your behaviors and limitations without you even realizing it. Then the educational system reinforced this programming in subtle but powerful ways. School didn't teach you how to create wealth. It taught you how to follow instructions, how to stay within the lines, how to be a reliable employee. The entire structure was designed to produce workers who would fit neatly into existing systems, not entrepreneurs or wealth creators who would challenge and transcend those systems. You learned to value security over possibility, to choose the safe path over the risky one, to prioritize stability instead of growth. Society at large completed the conditioning by presenting you with a very specific narrative about how life should unfold. Get a good education, find a stable job, work for 40 years, save what you can, and hope you can retire with some dignity. That story became so ubiquitous that most people never question whether it's the only path or even the best path. They simply accept it as reality, as the way things are, and then wonder why they feel trapped in a life that doesn't fulfill them and doesn't generate the abundance they desire. All of this programming, layered on year after year, created the blockage in your channel. It's not your fault. You didn't consciously choose these limitations. But now, as an aware adult, it is your responsibility to recognize this programming for what it is and to deliberately replace it with beliefs and thoughts that actually serve your highest potential. The question isn't whether you were programmed. Everyone was. The question is whether you're willing to reprogram yourself now that you understand what's been happening. If you're seeing clearly how deep this conditioning goes and you're ready to dismantle it piece by piece, write in the comments, "I rewrite my money story." This is your declaration of freedom from inherited limitations. Once you've committed to rewriting your money story, once you've recognized the programming that's been running your life, the actual work of transformation begins. And this work is both simpler and more demanding than most people expect. The practice is straightforward. You become a vigilant observer of your own thoughts, watching them the way a guardian watches a gate, deciding what gets in and what needs to be redirected elsewhere. Every single time a scarcity thought attempts to enter your consciousness, your job is to notice it, not to judge yourself for having it, not to fight against it or pretend it's not there, but simply to recognize it. There's that old programming again. There's that inherited belief trying to run the show. And then, rather than letting it settle in and broadcast its limiting frequency, you consciously thank it for trying to keep you safe, because that truly is what it's attempting to do in its misguided way. And you deliberately replace it with a thought of abundance. When you catch yourself thinking, "I can't afford this," you pause, acknowledge the thought, and consciously choose "money flows to me easily and naturally." When you notice, "I'll never get ahead," you recognize it as old programming and replace it with "I am moving toward greater prosperity." Every day, this isn't about denying reality or lying to yourself. It's about choosing which seed you're going to water, which frequency you're going to amplify, which future you're going to create with your thoughts. The transformation that happens through this practice is nothing short of remarkable, but it requires consistency that most people aren't willing to maintain. Here's the timeline that matters: 90 days. If you commit to this practice for 90 consecutive days, observing your thoughts and consciously redirecting them from scarcity to abundance, your mind will literally become different. Neural pathways that have been reinforcing limitation for decades will begin to weaken. New pathways supporting abundance will strengthen with each repetition until they become your new default. This isn't motivational exaggeration. This is how neuroplasticity actually works. Your brain is constantly rewiring itself based on what you repeatedly think and do. The old pathways feel automatic and effortless because you've traveled them 10,000 times. But with consistent practice, the new pathways become just as automatic, just as effortless, until thinking abundant thoughts requires no more effort than breathing. But here's what I need you to understand about where you are right now, in this moment, watching this video and taking in these concepts. There's a particular phase in every person's journey toward wealth, toward transformation, toward living their true potential. It's called the breaking point, and it's one of the most significant moments you'll ever experience. The breaking point happens when something shifts deep inside you. It's when the pain of staying exactly where you are, of continuing to live the same limited life, of repeatedly falling short of your potential, when all of that accumulated pain becomes greater than your fear of change, greater than your attachment to the familiar, greater than all the reasons and excuses you've been using to stay small. Something inside you stands up and says, "Enough," and this time it truly means it. Not the half-hearted, "I should probably do something different" that fades by next week, but a fundamental "I cannot live this way anymore" that comes from the core of your being. Perhaps you're at that breaking point right now. Perhaps that's why this message found you, why you've stayed engaged through this entire journey of understanding, why something inside you is responding to these truths in a way that feels different from all the other content you've consumed. That internal stirring, that sense of, yes, this is it, this is what I've been missing. That's often the signal that you've reached your breaking point, that you're ready to finally do what you've been avoiding, to finally become who you've been afraid to be. The breaking point isn't comfortable. It's actually quite confronting because it forces you to admit that you've been complicit in your own limitation, that you've been choosing safety over growth, that the life you're living is the result of thousands of small decisions to stay comfortable rather than stretch into possibility. If you're feeling this internal pressure, this sense that something must change and it must change now, write in the comments, "This is my breaking point." Acknowledge this pivotal moment in your journey. When you reach that breaking point, when you've truly decided that transformation is no longer optional, the next critical distinction you need to understand is the difference between types of action. Because not all action is created equal, and this difference determines whether your efforts lead to breakthrough or simply more exhaustion and disappointment. There's desperate action, and there's inspired action, and the gap between them is vast. Most people operate almost exclusively from desperate action. They hustle because they're afraid. They work extra hours because they're worried about bills. They search for opportunities from a place of need, of "I must find something" or "I'm in trouble." That energy of desperation, that frequency of fear-based activity, it permeates everything they do. And here's what happens. Desperate action creates more situations that require desperate action. It's a cycle that feeds itself because the energy behind the action is lack, and lack attracts more lack. But inspired action operates from a completely different frequency. It emerges not from fear, but from possibility. Not from emptiness, but from fullness. When you take inspired action, you're moving towards something you desire because you feel called to it, because it excites you, because something in your higher self recognizes this as the right path. There's a quality of flow to inspired action. It doesn't feel forced or heavy. Even when it requires significant effort, that effort feels energizing rather than depleting. The universe responds to these two types of action in dramatically different ways. When you act from desperation, you're broadcasting the signal, "I don't have, I need, I'm lacking," and the universe mirrors that back with obstacles, delays, and resistance. But when you act from inspiration, when you move from a place of already feeling abundant and simply following your inner guidance toward greater expression, the universe conspires to support you. Synchronicities appear. The right people show up at the right time. Doors open that you didn't even know existed. This distinction matters enormously because it means that working harder isn't the answer if you're working from the wrong energy. You could double your effort, triple your hustle, and still not achieve the breakthrough you're seeking if all that action is coming from fear and desperation. But a single inspired action, taken from the right frequency, can create more results than months of desperate striving. So how do you know if an action is inspired or desperate? Check in with yourself. Are you moving toward something or running away from something? Are you acting from love and possibility or from fear and need? The answer tells you everything about what kind of results that action will generate. Now, I need to ask you something directly, something that might expose an uncomfortable truth. Do you really want to be rich? And I don't mean the casual, "yeah, of course, who doesn't want money" response that everyone gives. I'm talking about the kind of burning, all-consuming desire that Napoleon Hill identified as the starting point of all significant achievement. The kind of desire that wakes you up at night with ideas. The kind of desire that makes you willing to do whatever it takes, to become whoever you need to become, to persist through every obstacle. Most people, if they're honest with themselves, don't actually want wealth at that level of intensity. What they want is the fantasy of being rich. They want the pleasant daydream of what they'd buy, where they'd travel, how they'd live. But they don't want the transformation required to actually become a wealthy person. They don't want to face their fears, change their identity, reprogram their entire operating system, maintain vigilant discipline over their thoughts day after day. The fantasy is comfortable, the transformation is demanding. There's a huge difference between casually wishing you had more money and being absolutely committed to creating wealth, no matter what it takes. That level of desire, that burning commitment, it changes everything because it provides the fuel needed to persist through the inevitable challenges and setbacks. If you're discovering right now that your desire has been more fantasy than commitment, and you're ready to cultivate real burning desire, write in the comments, "I choose total commitment." This marks the shift from wishing to becoming. Once you've moved from fantasy to genuine commitment, once you've ignited that burning desire within yourself, you need to understand what you're actually committing to. Because the path to wealth, to true abundance, requires payment, but the currency isn't what most people expect. The price isn't measured in money. The forbidden book, these deeper truths we've been exploring, they only fully reveal themselves to those willing to pay a very specific cost. That cost is the death of your old identity. It's the willingness to let the version of yourself who struggles, who plays small, who hides behind excuses, to let that version and die completely. An identity death, even when it's leading you towards something better, feels like real loss. You've been that person for so long that releasing them feels like losing a part of yourself. In a way, you are. You're allowing an outdated version to dissolve so a truer, more powerful version can emerge. The price also includes discomfort. Not just the passing discomfort of a challenging moment, but sustained discomfort as you grow beyond your current capacity. You'll be stretching into territories that feel unfamiliar and uncertain. You'll be doing things that scare you, making decisions that your old self would have avoided, stepping into visibility and responsibility that your comfort-seeking mind will resist. This discomfort is actually evidence that you're growing, but that doesn't make it any easier to sit with. And perhaps most significantly, the price includes facing your deepest fears and walking through them anyway. Fear of failure, fear of success, fear of being adjudged, fear of discovering you're not enough or that you are enough and now you have to live up to that. Whatever fears have been running your life from the shadows, they all come to the surface when you genuinely commit to transformation. And your willingness to feel those fears fully, to acknowledge them without letting them dictate your choices, that's the ultimate key that unlocks the next level. This commitment, this willingness to pay the real price of transformation, it separates those who achieve lasting wealth from those who remain stuck in cycles of temporary gains and perpetual struggle. The universe tests your commitment constantly, not to be cruel, but to ensure you're ready for what you're asking for. Because wealth doesn't just bring freedom, it brings responsibility, visibility, and a whole new set of challenges that require a stronger version of you to navigate. But commitment alone isn't enough. You also need what I call intelligent persistence, and this is crucially different from the blind persistence that exhausts so many people. Blind persistence is doing the same thing over and over, grinding away at an approach that isn't working, confusing effort with effectiveness. It's the person who keeps pushing on a door marked pull, getting increasingly frustrated that their hard work isn't producing results. Intelligent persistence operates differently. It means you remain absolutely focused on your goal, unwavering in your destination, but you stay completely flexible about the path you take to get there. You're willing to adjust your methods, to try different approaches, to pivot when something isn't working. You don't interpret failure as a sign to give up. You interpret it as valuable feedback about what doesn't work, which brings you one step closer to discovering what does. Every genuinely wealthy person has failed. Not once, not twice, but multiple times. The difference between them and everyone else isn't that they avoided failure. It's that they refused to let failure define them or stop them. They got back up, they tried again, they adjusted their approach and kept moving forward. The question isn't whether you'll fall. You will. The question is how quickly you'll get back up, what you'll learn from the fall, and whether you'll let it make you stronger or convince you to quit. If you're understanding that persistence means staying flexible while remaining committed to your ultimate vision, write in the comments, "I adapt and persist." This is your declaration of intelligent determination. Understanding intelligent persistence is crucial, but there's another principle that's equally important and often completely misunderstood. Most people live their entire lives focused on the future, on some distant moment when things will finally be different. They tell themselves, "I'll be happy when I'm wealthy," or "My life will start once I achieve this goal." But here's what they're missing. The only moment where you actually have creative power is right now, this present moment. The future isn't real. It's a mental construction, a concept you use to organize your thinking, but it has no actual existence. You've never experienced the future, and you never will, because by the time it arrives, it's the present. And the past, while it certainly happened, is also just memory now, just thoughts about what was. The only point of genuine power, the only moment where you can actually make a choice, take an action, shift your frequency. That's right here, right now. In this exact moment, you have the ability to choose an abundant thought over a scarcity thought. Right now, you can shift from worry to gratitude. In this breath, you can align with your higher self rather than your conditioned personality. And every single choice you make in the present moment is literally constructing your future. Not in some vague, abstract way, but actually determining which timeline you're moving into, which version of your potential life you're collapsing into reality. This is why people who focus obsessively on future goals often feel frustrated and unfulfilled. They're always projecting their happiness, their peace, their sense of abundance into some imaginary future point, which means they never actually experience it. But when you bring your awareness fully into the present, when you choose to feel abundant now, to be grateful now, to align with your highest self now, you're not only creating the foundation for future wealth, you're experiencing the essence of wealth immediately. Wealth isn't just about the numbers in your bank account. At its core, it's a state of being, a feeling of sufficiency and freedom. And you can access that state right now through conscious choice, regardless of your current circumstances. When you do that consistently, when you live in the feeling of abundance in the present moment, the external circumstances must eventually reflect that internal state. It's law. But here's something practical that affects your present moment experience more than you probably realize: the people you surround yourself with. There's an old saying that you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And this isn't just folk wisdom, it's observable reality. Your social circle shapes your thinking, influences your beliefs, and determines the frequency you vibrate at more than almost any other factor. If the 5 people you interact with most frequently are negative, if they're constantly complaining about money, if they've accepted limitation as their reality, that energy is contagious. You can't help but absorb it. Their scarcity mindset becomes background noise that gradually programs your own consciousness. You start to think like them, see the world through their lens, accept their limitations as universal truths rather than personal choices. You cannot fly with eagles while you're surrounded by chickens. That's not a judgment about anyone's worth as a human being. It's simply recognition that different people operate at different frequencies. And if you're committed to ascending to a higher level, if you're serious about wealth creation and personal transformation, you must become extremely selective about whose energy you allow into your sphere. This might mean some difficult decisions. You might need to create distance from people you care about, not because they're bad people, but because their frequency doesn't support your evolution. You might need to spend less time in conversations that drain you and more time seeking out people who inspire you, challenge you, believe in possibility rather than limitation. Protecting your energy isn't selfish, it's essential. Your mind is sacred territory, and you get to decide who has access to it. If you're recognizing that you need to be more intentional about your social environment, write in the comments, "I choose my circle wisely." This is your commitment to protecting your frequency. Becoming intentional about your social circle is a powerful step, but there's another piece of this puzzle that determines whether your transformation actually takes root or remains just another unfulfilled intention. It's about how you work with beliefs, particularly the enormous beliefs around wealth and what's possible for you. And here's where most people make a critical mistake that sabotages their entire journey before it even begins. They try to leap from where they are to where they want to be in one giant, impossible jump. Someone who's been struggling financially their whole life tries to convince themselves overnight that they're a millionaire. Someone who's never earned 6 figures attempts to believe they can suddenly generate 7. And what happens? Their subconscious mind, which is extremely protective and conservative by nature, rejects that belief completely. It's too far from current reality, too disconnected from any evidence or experience. The gap is simply too wide to bridge in a single step. This is why affirmations often fail. Not because the technique is flawed, but because people are using it incorrectly, trying to install beliefs that their deeper mind finds utterly unbelievable. It's like trying to jump from the ground floor to the 10th floor of a building. It doesn't matter how much you believe in jumping, you're not making it up there in one leap. But what you can do is climb the stairs, one floor at a time. Each step bringing you closer to your destination. The belief ladder works the same way. You start where you actually are, with a belief that's just slightly beyond your current reality, but still believable to your subconscious. Maybe that's, "I can earn a little more than I'm earning now." That feels possible, doesn't it? Your mind doesn't reject it because you can imagine the steps that would get you there. So you hold that belief, you take actions aligned with it, and you prove it to yourself. Through experience. Once that belief is solidified, once you've actually increased your income even a little bit, you've created evidence. Your subconscious now has proof that change is possible, that you're capable of improving your financial situation. Now, you can reach for the next rung on the ladder. I can double my current income. Again, from your new vantage point, this feels achievable. You climb that step. Then the next. I can create multiple income sources. And with each proven belief, each demonstrated capability, the next larger belief becomes accessible. This is how you genuinely transform your relationship with money without triggering subconscious resistance. You honor where you are while systematically expanding what you believe is possible. It's patient, it's strategic, and it actually works because you're working with your psychology rather than against it. But understanding beliefs isn't enough by itself. There's another essential component that must be present for transformation to manifest in physical reality. You need the marriage of two worlds, the integration of internal and external, the union of vision and action. Because here's a truth that the spiritual community sometimes glosses over. Visualization alone, without corresponding action, produces nothing but pleasant daydreams. Yes, you need the vision. Yes, you need to align your frequency, believe in possibilities, connect with your higher self. All of that internal work is absolutely foundational, but it must be partnered with action in the physical world. The universe responds to people who are in motion, who are demonstrating through their behavior that they're serious about their vision. You can't just sit on your couch visualizing wealth and expect it to materialize. You have to get up, move, take steps, even small ones, that signal your commitment. This is the perfect marriage. Faith combined with work, believing in what you can't yet see while simultaneously moving your body and making decisions in the visible world. When these two elements come together, when your internal alignment is matched by external movement, that's when magic happens. If you're understanding that transformation requires both the inner work and the outer action working in harmony, write in the comments, "I believe and I act." This is your integration declaration. When you understand that belief and action must work together, when you've committed to both the internal frequency work and the external movement, there's one more relationship that needs to be fundamentally reimagined. It's your relationship with money itself. And for most people, this relationship is completely backwards, inverted in a way that creates endless struggle and disempowerment. Most people serve money, they work for it, stress about it, organize their entire lives around trying to get more of it. Money becomes the master that dictates their choices, determines their worth, controls their emotional state. When they have it, they feel temporary relief. When they don't, they feel panic and inadequacy. Their entire sense of security and identity becomes tied to this external thing that fluctuates and flows beyond their complete control. But this is the exact opposite of how the relationship is meant to function. Money isn't your master. It's your servant. It's simply a tool, a form of energy that flows through you to accomplish purposes, solve problems, create experiences, and generate good in the world. When you understand money this way, when you recognize it as the servant it actually is, everything shifts. You stop being desperate and needy around it. You stop giving it power over your emotional state. You stop making decisions from fear of not having enough. Instead, you step into the position of master. You direct money. You tell it where to go, what to accomplish, how to serve your highest vision. You use it consciously and strategically as the tool it is, rather than being used by it. And here's what's fascinating. When money recognizes that you're the master, when it senses that you're not attached to it with desperate need, but rather guiding it with wisdom and purpose, it flows to you more readily. Because energy, including money, wants to go where it will be used well, where it will be multiplied, where it will create more value. This shift from servant to master, from being controlled by money to controlling money, it's a subtle but profound internal reorientation that changes your entire experience of wealth. You stop chasing and start directing. You stop begging and start commanding. Not from ego, not from arrogance, but from the clear understanding of the true nature of this relationship. But there's an even deeper truth underneath all of this, something that brings us back to where we began and completes the circle of understanding. After everything we've explored, after all the principles and practices and insights, we arrive at the most fundamental recognition of all. You are already rich, not in some distant future when you've accumulated enough, not after you've applied all these techniques and manifested external abundance. Right now, in this moment, at the core of your being, you are abundance itself. This isn't motivational hyperbole. This is literal truth. You didn't come into this world from scarcity. You emerged from the same infinite creative source that generates galaxies, that organizes atoms into mountains and oceans and stars. That source is pure abundance, infinite possibility, limitless creative power, and you are made of that substance. You are that intelligence expressing itself in human form. Scarcity has never been your truth. It's just been a very convincing story, a narrative you inherited and believed so thoroughly that it became your experienced reality. But a story is all it's ever been. When you fully awaken to your true nature, when you remember what you actually are underneath all the conditioning and fear, you stop struggling to create wealth. Instead, you simply allow it. You open yourself to receive what was always flowing toward you. If you're feeling this recognition dawning, if something deep inside is remembering this truth, write in the comments, "I am already abundant." Let this be your moment of remembering who you've always been. If you've made it all the way to this point, if you've stayed with me through this entire journey of understanding, that means something. It means you're not just a casual viewer looking for quick tips. It means you're genuinely ready for transformation. And that matters, because the work we're doing here goes deeper than surface-level strategies. This is about fundamentally rewiring how you relate to wealth, to possibility, to your own potential. I create this content because I know there are people like you out there, people who sense there's more to life than what they've been taught, people who are ready to access the deeper truths about abundance, people who are willing to do the real inner work that creates lasting change. If that's resonating with you, if you want to continue this journey and dive deeper into these principles, then subscribe to the channel. This isn't just random content, it's a pathway, each video building on the last, designed to support your evolution from scarcity consciousness to genuine abundance. And do me a favor, leave a comment right now saying, "I received this message." Let me know you were here, that this landed with you, that something shifted. I read those comments, and there's something powerful about declaring your readiness publicly. It's not just for me. It's for you, cementing this moment of recognition in your consciousness. If this content created value for you, if something here sparked a realization or gave you a new perspective, hit that like button. It's a simple gesture, but it helps this message reach others who need it, others who are searching for these truths, just like you were before you found this video. And listen, this conversation isn't over. There's another video right here that takes what we've explored today even deeper. It's the natural next step on this path we're walking together. Click on it and continue with me there. Let's keep going. Your transformation is just beginning, and I want to be part of supporting you through it. I'll see you in the next one.